When we were kids in the 60s, we always had a couple of pence, old ones that is, for the penny box at the local corner shop. If you went into this place called Bonail's at the top of the road, there was always a seat at the end of the shop, and plonked on there would be a big fat local old biddy that knew everybody's business. She'd be there to top up on gossip and spread a bit more as far as she could. Mrs. Bonail was a rather dour-looking woman, whose face could sour the milk they sold, and frequently did, according to the rumours. There was never a till, but a wooden drawer fitted beneath the counter. If customers brought several things, a list would be scribbled in pencil on a scrap of paper. If we kids went in and asked to look in the penny box, old girl Bonail would slap on the counter a tatty cardboard shoebox and tell us to pick the bones out of that. It contained fizzy space saucers, blackjacks, and all other sorts of chews. We were never afforded the luxury that other customers enjoyed in terms of perusing the merchandise. This was no doubt due to her being frightened some kid might pocket some sweets without paying for them. The rule of thumb was about 20 seconds viewing time, a bit like the prize board on bullseye turning. She then banged the box on the counter and all the sweets would jump up as she commanded us to make up our minds as she didn't have all day. If she was really annoyed, we'd be threatened with our mothers being told, which never happened. You could always overhear all sorts of snippets of conversation in that shop. I remember the first time I ever heard people having something called piles. My pal Daisy foolishly inquired from her mum, saying they were talking about having piles in the shop. But piles of what, Mum? Her mum said, you'll certainly know what piles are when you have them. This all seemed to be a very strange, sort of coded language, along with the other topic in the shop of Mrs. Bonail claiming she had trouble down below. After further discussion with Daisy, we just assumed that she meant an untidy cellar beneath the shop. Another discussion took place after we overheard her moan about her terrible hot flushes. After which I went home and told my mum that Mrs. Bonail's toilet flushed with hot water, but she must be having trouble with it working. The shop sold all sorts of household products, and there always seemed to be the sound of a bacon slicer going in the background, a sort of whirling noise. This was the sole territory of her husband, slicing bacon, ham, any number of cooked meats. They had a set of scales for meat and another for some vegetables. My mum always claimed that the scales for bacon were deliberately miscalibrated in Mrs. Bonail's favour. Mum was always toying with reporting her to the weights and measures department, and that was a forerunner to trading standards, but she never did. One memory from the early 60s was when Bonail's got a freezer cabinet. Customers were not permitted to help themselves to block ice cream. It had to be retrieved by Mr. or Mrs. Bonail, and this was not popular with customers, but she didn't care, instructing them to stand back while she got it for them. On one of the rare occasions the Bonails went away for a weekend, resulting in the shop being closed, as she would not trust anyone to run the shop for them, a catastrophe took place. They returned late Sunday night to discover someone had switched the freezer off, causing all the contents to defrost. Shouldn't have happened that quickly, but it did, and she was incandescent with anger. The gossip was that several different people's names were in the frame, but amazingly no kids. Nobody ever owned up, and none of the defrosted ice cream could be sold. And 3 months later, someone put a house brick through the side window, and that was an even bigger scandal. I think it all became too much for the Bonails, and they sold up and retired to Bournemouth. So I imagine they must have done well out of the shop.